personally very excited to have Mindie here with us today. And I told her I'm going to give her just a very brief introduction so that she can spend the time telling you about herself. But just want all of you to know it's super special to have her here. And I'm very, very excited to have her here, and I hope you are too. You'll learn a lot of great things from Mindie today. So Kniss, she is an entrepreneur, a professional coach, a writer, a speaker, an award-winning humanitarian. She's the CEO and founder of Lucra, which is a coaching business devoted to helping entrepreneurs create wealth in all areas of their life. And I think that's what's really special and unique about Mindie, is that it's not just one thing she's going to come talk to you about, but creating wealth, prosperity, and just goodness in all aspects of your life. And is really focused on serving the individual and doing good to those people that need help and need to be lifted up. And so without further ado, I will introduce Mindie Kniss.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is awesome to be here with you today. Thanks, Landon, for that great intro. All of this got started for me in 2006 in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, all of this is this entrepreneurial adventure that I've been on since then. Now, you all may be at some stage of that game. Maybe you have started a business already, maybe you haven't, but I promise you that it is an adventure. For me, the reason I was over in Nairobi, Kenya, was I was on loan from my corporate job that was in Michigan. I was working as an HIV and AIDS prevention initiative support person. So lots of really cool stuff going on over in East Africa. I was living over there for 6 months. And what that gave me the opportunity to do is to step back and look at my normal day-to-day life and ask myself some pretty hard questions. The hardest question is, what do I really want? Do I want this corporate career? Do I want this Fortune 100 job? Do I want all of these check boxes that I'm like, yeah, you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to get a degree, you're supposed to get a good job, you're supposed to buy a house, all of these things. Is that really what I want? Now, when I talk to my coaching clients, a lot of times that is the hardest question that they will ever have to answer. Now, it seems like it should be easy, right? Like, what do I want? But oftentimes we often first go to, what do I not want? What don't I want? And I was very, very clear on what I didn't want. I didn't want to keep working in a cubicle. I didn't want to do a bunch of paperwork. I didn't want to have a job that was really very indirect in terms of the impact I could have on the planet or the world at large. So then, of course, I was left with the question, okay, well, what do I want? What might it look like? When I go back to the United States, what do I want to recreate? So while I was there during that 6-month period, I decided on 2 things. First and foremost, I wanted to go back to grad school. I wanted to pursue writing. Secondly, I wanted to start a business as a coach. The reason I chose coaching is because I had always been the type of person who people would come to just to ask for advice. Oftentimes when I wasn't necessarily offering that, they would just show up and be like, hey, can I ask you a question? Or, hey, can I just talk to you about something? They just inherently trusted me. So I was like, okay, why not take that and utilize that in greater service to humanity? So that's what I decided to do when I was in Nairobi. Here's where it got really, really crazy. I decided to give myself 1 year. I'm big on deadlines. Anytime a client of mine is like, oh, I want to do this, my question is always, by when? Put a date on it. Because otherwise you could just keep talking about it, not really actually doing anything to fulfill that dream. So I gave myself a by when. And I said, I want to, within a year of getting back to the United States, I want to apply to grad school. And I don't have any idea if I'm going to get in because my undergrad was in theology and comparative religion. I wanted to go to grad school for writing. I don't know, I'm going to try that out. And 2, start this business. Within that year, I want to start the coaching business, ramp that up, and ramp down my corporate career. And then at the end of that year, once I get back to the US, say peace out, give in my resignation, call it good. I'd be off to fulfill my destiny, right? So my belief is that when we are that clear on what we want, the universe will rally to support that vision. Here's what happened in my case. 2 days before I was set to leave from Nairobi. So I was set to leave on a Wednesday. This was a Monday. On Monday, there's all this chatter online. Mindie, something's going on with your company. What's happening? I don't know. I'm in Kenya. Like, please, somebody tell me. I'm on the other side of the world. So I'm calling my friends. Nobody's at their desk. Nobody's answering the phone. I'm like, what is happening? I'm Googling, oh, your company made this big, big announcement. Of course, I don't know what that announcement is or how it impacts me. On Tuesday, I finally get in touch with people and find out what's going on. Our site in Ann Arbor, Michigan has decided to close. And I'm like, that's amazing, because I was planning to leave anyway. Now, a lot of people didn't feel that same way about it. There was a lot of traumatic situations going on, people losing their jobs, not being able to support their families, et cetera. But for me, I thought that was a pretty great idea. And then once I got back to the US, it got even crazier. Because once all the decisions were made and the, everything that we had to do to close down that site was set out, I found out that for my group, we had 1 year to decommission our plant, transfer our project, get everything done that we needed to get done, and then at the end of that year, we could do one of two things. We could either transfer with the company to Groton, Connecticut, no thanks, or take a severance. And I was like, you're kidding me. I was already planning to be out within that year, and it was almost to the day when I finally left that company. So that's what I mean by the universe can rally in support of your dream, of your vision. Because the reality was, while that was a great job, there were fantastic people, great money, great salary, great benefits, my heart was not in it. And if there's one thing that I want to tell you today, it's to follow your heart. Now, that may sound like a super woo-woo or foo-foo idea, but the cool thing about modern technology and research today is that there are so many studies that are proving out that it actually might be a great thing to follow your heart. You've probably heard of HRV, or heart rate variability. I've done a lot of research in this field, and it is fascinating what the heart can let you know. Here's why. Our fears, our doubts, and our insecurities are in here, are in the head. So oftentimes we may have this big dream, we may have this big vision, but we get stuck or we get stalled because we run into those fears, doubts, and insecurities, because we're trying to live out that vision through our head. Well, that doesn't really work. If you follow your heart's directive, that can change everything. Here's why I wanted to go into this entrepreneurial venture. My highest value is freedom. I love, love, love freedom. So being an entrepreneur provides you with a variety of different types of freedom. It provides you with the freedom of location, because if you run the show, you should be able to work from wherever you want to work. I've lived a lot of places in the United States and overseas. I've traveled across Europe. I can do my work from any place as long as there's a good internet connection. So freedom of location was one thing. Freedom of time. That's another big one for me. I want to control my schedule. I didn't love a corporation saying you need to be at your desk by this time, you need to leave at this time. Other than a class like this that exists at a certain time, which I'm going to show up to, I like to be in control of when I have things on my calendar or when I don't. There's also freedom of income. One of the things that I was so frustrated with in corporate America were these things, at least in my company, called bands. Now, the band was what level you were or what title you had. And let's say you were the most amazing employee in that band, or maybe even better than the people above, in the band. Let's say if you're in band 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, you could be rocking it, running circles around them, more amazing than them, but you wouldn't be paid like them. And you might not even be able to move up into that band because of things like headcount and budget. I'm like, I want to be in control of my own income. If I want to make more money, then I need to get more clients, or I need to learn something about marketing or do a different tactic, something like that. But at least it's in my control, as opposed to somebody saying, you are only going to be paid this much regardless of how good you are at your job. That, to me, I wasn't that into. So again, it was freedom of income. And finally, there's freedom of purpose. As I said earlier, my heart was not into that whole corporate gig. So the ability that I had to do something that was much more in alignment with myself. And in order to know what that is, you have to get to know yourself. You may have heard that famous phrase, know thyself. That's the key. But recognizing what you're good at, what you like, what you do naturally well, if you can put together some sort of business that incorporates those things, you're going to be well on your way. So those were some of the reasons that I loved the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. So I was in Kenya in 2006, came back to the United States in 2007. I was ready to set off on my destiny, ready to achieve all these dreams. I was really certain that I was going to be a millionaire by, that next year, something like that. And then in 2008, that was my time. My job ended. I took my severance, and because I don't apparently do anything small, I'm like, I'm just not gonna do one thing, I'm gonna do like 40 things. So I moved across the country. At that same time, moved to Portland, Oregon. I did apply to one single grad school, got into that. That was also in Oregon, which was part of my move, and I was ready to set off on this new life adventure. I was stoked. Then, and some of you may recall that 2008, the housing crisis was just starting at that time. The Great Recession, as it is called now, was going on at that time, so it might not have been the best time to start a brand new business. I didn't know that, though. I was just going off doing what I was here to do. And I could blame what happened next on that economic situation, but another one of my values is 100% responsibility. So I believe that whatever it is that I am experiencing is most likely a consequence or coming from decisions that I have made, actions that I have taken, or something that I have chosen to do. And then there may be great things that happen from that, and there might be bad things that happen from that. In my case, this dream that I had created wasn't going so well. Because while I was really, really solid in my capabilities as a coach and in leadership, that's stuff I had been doing for a long time. When I was a kid, younger at my church, I was involved in leadership the whole way through. And then later in the corporate scene, I was doing tons of leadership there. So that part of the equation, cool, solid, awesome. But you know what I didn't have? Any skill in marketing or sales. And I was way too overconfident and way too naive at the time to know that that was an absolute essential piece of the puzzle. Because if you don't do any marketing or you don't do any sales, you don't have any cash flow. Cash flow is the lifeblood of any business. So I was struggling. It got so bad that within 2 years, so this is 2010 now, within 2 years, I was evicted from the apartment that I was living in Portland, Oregon, because I couldn't pay the rent. My house that I still owned in Michigan was foreclosed. I was struggling on a day-to-day basis to find enough money to eat. It literally was scrounging for change on some days to get enough money to get $1 together to go buy something at Jack in the Box on the dollar menu. And I was really happy I lived in Oregon because there is not sales tax there, so it was literally $1. It was a bad time. On top of that struggle, there was the internal struggle. I was supposed to be this coach helping other people with their life. Do you think I didn't feel like the biggest fraud on the planet or the biggest imposter? Like, what am I doing? This is a joke. And to top all of that off, I ended up filing for bankruptcy because by that point in time, I was 6 figures in debt in terms of credit cards. I had my mortgage. I had all these other things. I had gone through all of that money, including the severance that I had gotten from my company, gone through all my credit cards, gone through my 401k, which you should never touch, set that aside, leave it alone. And there was nothing left. So I decided to do that bankruptcy. And what happened was that was great on the side of the credit card debt. But you know what bankruptcy does not take away? Student debt. So I still had about 6 figures of student loans that I had to pay off, and I was not making any money. Now, I was making a little bit. I had clients occasionally. But I also had the mindset that marketing and sales was slick and sleazy, and I didn't want anything to do with that. I'm like, I want people to come work with me because I'm a good coach or because I'm able to help them. However, without that marketing and sales piece, how would they even know that? You can be the greatest coach or the greatest whatever, fill in the blank, on the planet, but if nobody knows about you, that business is not going to last very long. You have to embrace the joy of marketing and sales. So I had a decision to make at that point. It was a huge struggle. I was living out of a teensy tiny one-room office in Portland. And my choices were either, okay, throw in the towel, forget about all this. Obviously it didn't work. Obviously it screwed up. Go back to corporate America, I guess. Or recommit and go even deeper. Recommit and learn everything you can about marketing, about sales, about actually running a business, not just being like, oh, I'm a great coach. So that's what I decided to do. And at any point in time, you all can decide that too. If something's not going well for you, there's always the choice to leave it and go do something else, and that's fine. But you always have the choice to recommit and even go deeper if that is what is in your heart. If that is your dream to pursue that thing, then I hope that you will put in the work for that. So once that happened, things started to change. In 2011, I did my first live event in Sedona, Arizona, and it could have, to any outside observer, been called a complete failure. There was only 5 people there. One of them was me. One of them was my dear friend from Portland, Oregon. That doesn't count because she didn't pay me to be there. One of them was a dear friend from New Orleans. That doesn't count. She didn't pay me to be there. One of them was her daughter. That doesn't count. And then one single actual paying customer. Somehow, I have no idea how this gentleman found out about my work, but he flew from the UK to come to Sedona, Arizona, and attend my weekend event. And it was because of that guy that I was like, okay, something is working here. These weren't just friends that I kind of collected to put the butts in the seats. Something is working here, and maybe this has potential. I don't know unless I try it. So one of the things that happened because of that event, at that event I talk a lot about following your heart. I talk about the science of heart intelligence and neurocardiology. And I talk about getting on your purpose. Like, what is it that you're here to do? What is your reason for being? Why are you here? And as that event would go on year after year after year, a lot of people would say things like, well, Mindie, I think I want to do what you're doing. I think I'd like to be a coach. Where should I start? What should I do? And I didn't really have any place to send them because I hadn't gone through any certification or training or anything. I just kind of made it up as I went along. So I was like, yeah, I don't know. I guess just start a business and good luck. Well, obviously that wasn't very helpful. So year after year, event after event, I kept hearing this. And finally in 2014, I heard it enough that I was like, all right, maybe I'll just create a program. I had my first online course. It was a coach training program. So anybody who said, hey, I'd like to become a coach, I could take them soup to nuts, 0 to, hey, now you have a coaching business, and be able to help them along the way, mostly to say, here are all the mistakes that I made, please don't do it that way. Here's a better way to look at it. Or hey, you don't have to be afraid of marketing and sales like I was, here's a better way to have that perspective. That then did change everything for me because that year, 2014, I went from being an absolute struggle bus coach to making my first 6 figures annually. Reason being is I had something that was then repeatable. And that's something you always want to look for in any business that you create. You don't want to have to create one thing once and then do another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. That's exhausting. If you can find out something that you can rinse and repeat, that's great. I got these people together, I taught them some stuff, I recorded it. That then became something that I offered twice a year. And then from that offering, I'd be like, hey, did you have a great time here? Let's do an upsell, let's keep rocking. Here's the next program. And you can always then answer what your customers or your clients, what is their next need? What is the next question that they're gonna have for you? What's the next offering that you can provide? In 2012, I got married, and the reason I mention that is because my husband is gonna play a big, big part in this story. He and I had this really, really fun relationship because we were in the same industry, but had very, very different personalities. I'm a huge introvert, mostly a hermit, and he was the opposite of that. Huge extrovert, always something going on, always tons of people. So we brought different skill sets to the table and ended up combining forces, and that was a lot of fun. So I know a lot of you are quite young in here, but you might hear, oh, you should never work with your spouse. You should never go into business with family. We didn't find that to be true at all. We actually had a better time. We felt like we could be a stronger force together than individually, and so that was a lot of fun. Then I'm gonna fast forward, 2019. By that time, my husband had let go of some, I'll just say it nicely, toxic business partners that he had in his past. He got kind of through that, past that, and we felt like now we are combined forces, sky's the limit. At that point in time, we were doing about 500K in annual revenue. We felt like we were just getting started. And then in August of 2019, on a very, very average, ordinary Wednesday, we were heading out of our house to go to the gym. He had a fall, he hit his head on the ground, caused immediate swelling to his brain. We rushed him into emergency surgery, and he didn't make it. So within 4 hours from leaving our house on a very regular Wednesday, 4 hours later, I was coming back to that house solo. Now that house was a house that we hadn't even finished moving into yet. We had bought another house before where we had been living. We were renting this second house as an office space, decided that would be a better option for us to live in. And he passed away in the midst of just all of that real estate transactions. So there I was having another turning point in my life. What do I want to do now? And let me tell you, I know that all of you, I don't know what your individual story is, but I know that all of you have gone through something. Maybe it's a loss of a family member. Maybe it's a health issue. Maybe it's a financial issue like I had. I had felt like during that financial problem that I had hit rock bottom, and it was like the worst thing that possibly could have happened. But then losing my husband was completely so much worse, because that other stuff was just about money. That's not the end of the world. But now I was feeling very solo in this whole game. I was terrified as well. And I know money can bring up a lot of fear. I had plenty of scarcity stuff from my earlier days that I had had to work through. And you know what showed up right after my husband Sean passed away? I was like, how am I ever gonna make money again? That was my first question to myself, which is crazy because I had to remind myself, I'm like, Kniss, hello, you already had a 6-figure business before you combined forces with him. You probably could figure this out again, right? But it didn't feel that way at the time. So people that know me well were like, okay, Min, just take your time, you're gonna be fine. Because that's how I do things. I can process through quickly. Now that doesn't mean I don't miss him every single day, but I can tell you right now, it's been over 3 years, and life is really good, and life is really exciting, and life has a lot of potential. So whatever it is that you are currently going through, and like I said, I don't know your story, but you've all got one. Whatever it is that you're going through right now, The only way through is through. So keep going. Keep rocking it. So that was 2019. What I did in order to process through that was not listen to what anybody else said. People were like, oh, you should do this, this is how you grieve the best. Forget all that. Always do what is right for you, what you know to be true for you. What I knew to be true for me, because I'm an introvert, because I'm a hermit, I was like, I just need to be alone. So I was very, very blessed that my best friend said, hey, Min, just go to our desert house in California. Nobody's there, just stay there as long as you want. So I did. I went to the desert, was there by myself for months at the end of 2019, and allowed every single thing that needed to be felt. I knew that I wouldn't do that if I was just engaged in work or engaged in people or taking care of everyone else, you know. I just needed to do me. And for any of you that feel like you might need the permission to do you, because people in your life expect you to do things for them, I want to be clear, you have the permission to do you. That should be your top priority, because then you can help everybody else. Do you first. So that's what I did. In 2020, I was back in Arizona, and COVID shows up. I'm like, are you serious? Like, seriously, I'm not even through this horrendous grief process, and now this? Like, the world is now ending because of a virus? What the heck? So in mid-2020, I start seeing a lot of people online that are talking about trading. Trading in the stock market, trading options, different types of trading. I'm like, I think this would be kind of interesting. I might want to check it out. So I reached out to a friend of mine who is a professional trader, and I was like, hey, what should I do if I wanted to get into this? This was his advice. Don't start trading. Just put your money in the index fund. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. That's it. And I'm like, that's like the most boring advice I've ever heard in my life. You know me. That's not exactly what I'm looking for here. So the end of 2020, I take my first trading course. In 2021, I start trading. 7 months after that, my professional trader friend is like, hey, why don't you start documenting what you're doing? Just talking about what's working, what's not working, seeing what's happening. So I do that. I start a daily video newsletter, essentially. And then, because apparently this is how I do things, a couple months after that, I was teaching my first trading course. Now, this whole time, I've also had this Lucra coaching business running, working with entrepreneurs, I would call them aspiring or early stage entrepreneurs, people that are looking to get going or get growing with their business. And now I had this other income, which was one, profit from my own trading, and two, teaching what I was learning to others and having an income stream from that. So another thing that is crucially important for the success of business is having multiple streams of income. If you have all your eggs in one basket and something happens to that basket, that's a pretty bad situation. So if you can gain multiple streams, and it might be different types of services, different types of products, could be affiliate sales, there are so many different types of streams of income, but hugely, hugely important. I want to wrap up with a 4-step simple business plan. Then we'll do some Q&A. This is my personal business plan, and it's nothing like anything that I'm sure you're taught in these kinds of nice business courses. Step number 1, do something. What do I mean by that? Follow your interests, follow your passions, follow your curiosity, and do something. When I created my first Heart Path event, that first retreat, I literally just made it about everything I like to do. I like to hike, I like the wilderness, I like the outdoors. So I built it around that. I think it's important to do meditation, so I added that in there. I totally geek out on heart intelligence and neurocardiology, so I added that in there. I just made it about everything I like to do, and literally then I would be doing that already. And how much cooler is it that people come and now pay me to do that with me when I'd be doing it myself anyway? It's a pretty good gig. So do something. Step 2, screw it up. You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to quote unquote fail. And I put that in quotes because I don't really believe in failure other than quitting. If you quit, yes, that's the end of it. But I want you to screw things up. I want you to get into the weeds and find out. Reason being is because you don't even know at that point what you don't know, right? It's this unconscious incompetence. And how could you even know when you don't know what you don't know? So be willing to screw it up. That's step 2. Step 3 is figure it out. Recommit to learning everything about that endeavor, whatever it is. For me, I did this twice. Once, in starting a coaching business, I did something, started the coaching business, screwed it up, lost all the money, lost basically everything, figured it out, did it again in trading. What was I doing? I started trading. I was learning how to do that. I was trading futures. I did something. I screwed it up. I lost a lot of money in that at the beginning as well. Step 3, figure it out. I figured it out. I invested in myself to learn and grow and continue to develop. And step 4, this is where the income comes into you. Step 4 is to teach it to others. So again, I've done that in coaching. I've done that in trading with my various online courses. So 4 very, very simple steps. And a lot of people struggle there, when they go into that teaching phase. Well, I don't know everything about whatever your topic is. That's okay. You don't have to, nor should you, because really, if you did, you'd probably be like the world's leading expert on that thing, and you're probably likely not going to be teaching an online course to regular people about that topic. So really, this is what coaching or teaching is. You may be just a few more steps ahead in whatever topic that is of the people back there. Now, there will also be people ahead of you on that path. They are not your customer. So that's great that they're up there. Don't worry about them. But our role as coaches, as teachers, as trainers is simply this. We're going to turn around, look back to those people on the trail that are heading toward us, shine the light, and say, follow my voice. Let me see if I can make this a little bit easier for you than it was for me. Because I was on that trail, I was stumbling all over the place, I didn't know what I was doing. I have then figured it out to get to where I am now. Let me help you get to here. And oh, by the way, y'all are in this entrepreneur program, you're gonna keep growing. So you're gonna keep going down that path as well. That's not gonna stop for you. You're likely a lifetime learner, like a lot of us are. So you're gonna continue progressing down that path. Your customers are gonna be on that path. Some will totally surpass you, which is awesome. That just means you did your job. And some, maybe they're a little slower on the uptake, and they'll just hang out, and they'll still just learn from you and do whatever they're gonna do. So that's a super, if you are like, what should I do? What is my idea? I wanna make something awesome and big. Just do those 4 steps, and you've got something automatic. And today, ooh, you guys, you guys have it so easy, because back in the day when I was starting all of this, one, I didn't grow up with the internet, wasn't around back then, so I didn't know how to build a website. I would hear these things like, oh, just do a teleseminar. I'm like, I don't even know what that is, let alone how to do it. Like, what? These days, the software is so easy. A lot of it is free. It is the best, I think, and simplest time to be in business or to start a business. So what I have offered to you today is a story about my journey, the ups, the downs, the chaos, if you will, but always, always, always recognizing that there was a greater purpose, a greater mission, a greater goal here. It certainly wasn't to be in corporate America. And here's why I'm actually grateful for all of those situations that I faced, whether it be financial or my husband's passing. It's this. Because I can look anyone in the eye and say, I get you. Because I've been there. I may not have the exact same circumstances as you, but I've been through some hard stuff, and I know you have too. And not only do I get it, but I can be an example or an inspiration of what is possible for you too. What is potential for you? What is the ability that you have is if you reach into your heart, pull out what is true and what is authentic for you and you alone, and then say, cool, let's rock, how can I help? So I want you to write this down. If you have any questions going forward, we're gonna do a Q&A, but if there's something that you don't wanna ask in public or anything like this, feel free to contact me. My email is Mindie, M-I-N-D-I-E, at lucra, Lucra.com. If you guys want some free stuff, you can go to lucra.com, sign up on my email list. There's free courses, all kinds of stuff. You get my podcast, all this other jazz. What questions do you have for me? Please.
How do you find your graduate degree applies to your business?
So I have a couple of graduate degrees. Let's talk about, I have a writing degree. I was able to publish a book that made it to 2 categories, number 1 on Amazon, which was really exciting. It doesn't, really. My other degrees are in this philosophy program. I did a master's and PhD in that. Really what it gave me was awesome experiences. So is grad school necessary? Depends on the person. I like it. I'm a crazy, nerdy student, so I'm like, what's the next course? What's the next program? I love it, but if you don't love it, don't do it. I saw someone back here first, please.
Yeah, with the possible upcoming recession and people cutting luxury spending out of their budgets, do you feel your company's in a good position to ride it out? And if so, what steps have you taken to ensure that?
I actually love when things like that happen because I am the best case, well, not just me, but my type of company is in the best case position because I'm saying you cannot rely on these big companies that are going to give you a job. You cannot rely on something other than yourself. So I am all for situations like that. I mean, not that I want like the US economy to tank or anything, but it kind of puts us in an exciting potential position because of the possibilities when things, here's the reality about human nature. Oftentimes when things are fine or things are going okay, nobody really thinks a lot about like, oh, what should I do? They're just comfortable, right? Like they're just happy as is. But when things like that start to happen and the fear mongers of the news channels are all in your ears and saying all the bad stuff, the world's gonna end, people start paying attention. People start being like, well, hold on, maybe I should learn about how to actually manage my finances instead of letting someone else do that. Maybe I should take ownership of this. Maybe I should take more control of my job, of my finance, whatever. So I am actually delighted when that stuff happens because it wakes people up. And then I give them the opportunity to say, okay, here's what we can do in that situation. Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit of like the neurochirology or heart intelligence?
I would love to. Thank you for asking. Like to geek out on that. So as I mentioned, a lot of you probably heard about HRV, heart rate variability. It's become very big in terms of the research now. And here's what's awesome about it, is that today's research is essentially proving what the saints and the sages have been saying throughout history. They have said things like, the heart is the seat of the soul, the heart is the place where the spirit resides. Research is proving out that that might actually be true. Now you may believe that that is true just on your own personal experience, but now we have data to showcase that. So it's all based on being in what's called coherence. And coherence in the body is exactly the same as any other type of coherence. If you can understand what I'm saying, I'm speaking coherently, right? If I start mumbling or speaking Swahili or some other thing, you might not be able to understand me as well. Well, that would be incoherent. So and I don't know how it is for you guys, because you're a bit younger than I am. When I was growing up in school, they were always taught, like the whole thing was like, everything is controlled through the brain. The brain controls the whole body, runs down through the nervous system, and that's the only decision-making aspect in our bodies. Well, today, we know that that's not true. The heart sends many, many messages up to the brain and other parts of the body as well. And when those messages can get through clearly, that's when the body is in coherence. When the body is in coherence, all kinds of really good things happen in terms of health, physiology, even just mental stability, mental well-being, overall vitality. And here's what's really cool and a little bit creepy, is that coherence, and they've been able to test this time and time and time again, coherence is contagious. So if I drop into coherence because I know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that, your monitors will show that you are in greater coherence just because I am, and we're in the same field, which is pretty awesome. So it's all based on this electromagnetic field that the heart emits. And I don't know, years ago that might have sounded like science fiction, but it's able to be proven out now. So it's really, really fascinating. If you're interested, check out my book. I think it's free on Amazon. So thank you for asking about that. Other questions? Yes.
So you mentioned that you had to learn a lot about marketing and sales to be able to expand your business. How did you go about learning about those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a variety of different ways. One, books. I'm a reader. I'm very visual, so I often need to see things in front of my face. Like not just necessarily watching a video, but see it in print. That's my best way of learning. So I literally have read all kinds of different marketing books. That would be one way. Two was community. A friend of mine in Phoenix, Arizona, Joe Polish, he runs one of the biggest marketing networking groups in, I think, the world, called Kniss Network. He happened to be a personal friend, so we got really tied in with folks that knew what they were doing. And that helps a ton as well if you have the ability to either have a mentor, someone that you can kind of shadow, see what they're up to, even just get book recommendations from them, like, hey, what are you reading right now? You know, what's hot right now? And then a lot of just testing things out, you know, trying things out on a landing page, seeing what converts better, and going from there. So all kinds of different ways. And for any of you, I would say follow the path of least resistance in that. So if you're a reader, choose that. If you're a YouTube video watcher, choose that. There's resources in every different aspect. So pick the one that's going to work best for you. Yeah.
Did you learn about trading the same way?
I did. So trading, even more so I would say, was about doing it. Repetition after repetition after repetition. We talk all the time about getting your reps in. And that is showing up to the markets every day and watching the charts and recognizing the patterns and seeing what works again and what doesn't work. And that, I mean, it's a much faster game because you're gonna know if it's working or not working really fast. With marketing, it's a much slower experience of like, okay, let's see how that whole thing panned out, what were our numbers, what was the data. In trading, you're either winning or you're losing like right away. So yeah, I did a lot of that. And again, I've had some really great people. You know, all of us have the potential to reach out to community. I want to share this because I hear this often from people. You may hear in personal development conversation, like, oh, you should go hang out with millionaires and you should go hang out with very successful people because that's how you're going to get to be that way. And I know some people, I have some customers that they're like, well, I can't afford to be in those rooms with, you know, those billion-dollar people. So then I guess I don't have that opportunity. I'm like, the heck you don't, because you have books. Books are free at the library, or books are often free online. Read how people think. Understand how people think, not just what they do. And this comes up in trading a lot as well. A lot of people just want the tip or the tactic or like, hey, give me an indicator to show me how to do this. I'm like, why don't I teach you how to fish instead? And if you can understand how someone thinks, someone who is successful, someone who has done what you want to do, if you can understand how they think about something, you're much, much, much better off to go forward yourself than just to like know that one action that they took or that one thing that they did, right? What other questions?
Mindy, can I ask a question?
Please.
You talk about nothing being a failure unless you quit, and the trading aspect, you just had to show up and try it and do it. And I think that's vital to entrepreneurship in general. So what would you tell students as far as how do you start to train your mind or your attitude with being okay that I might fail or not succeed the way I want to lots and lots of times before I figure it out. How do we train our minds, our attitudes to be okay with that and build from those experiences?
Yeah, it's an awesome question, and I would recommend a complete paradigm shift. There's something I talk about, and more so especially in trading, but it can apply to either entrepreneurship or that. And that is, it's not win or lose. It's win or learn. So those are your only two options. You're either going to win, and hey, then cool, whatever you're doing is working. Do more of that. I can't tell you how often people will come to me and like, oh, I was doing this thing, and then I stopped doing that, and like, now I'm having all these problems. I'm like, well, why did you stop doing that? Because it was working. As humans, we all do this. You will recognize it in yourself. So keep doing the thing that is working. So you either win, or you don't lose, you learn. Oh, that didn't work. Let me change that up a little bit, try it a different way. Especially in marketing. Oh, that sold nothing? Okay, clearly, maybe it's the offer. Maybe it's the price. Maybe it's the audience that I'm trying to go forward toward. Could be any of those factors or all of them. Let me learn and try it again. Let me show up again and do this. One of my mentors, he always talks about the inputs. The inputs are the only piece of the puzzle that you control. We can't control if somebody's going to buy our stuff, but what we can control is how many sales webinars we're doing to potentially, hopefully, have people buy our stuff. So that's an input that we can control, and you only want to focus on the stuff that we can control because everything else, we don't have any say in that. We can do our best on our side of the table. But that other side of the table is for them to decide on, right? So focus on the inputs. Focus on what you can control.
One more question. Time for one more.
We have answered all the things and all the people. Yes, please.
So you talk about having to take care of yourself first.
Yes.
So with everything you've gone through, it seems like you've gotten discouraged at some point. How do you know? How do you do you do self-talk, or what works for you?
So what works for me is why I'm an entrepreneur. And let me tell you the difference between entrepreneurs and regular people, because we are not regular people. Entrepreneurs have the ability to see the future. And what that means is we are willing to not give into our need for immediate gratification, instant squirt of dopamine. Because there's a lot of hard stuff that shows up in business and life and all kinds of different things. But an entrepreneur, in that seeing the future, we are willing to recognize and put the need for instant gratification on hold in service of a greater future. And so what I did, I'll use my husband's passing as an example. Here's a weird thing, is that even though the experience of his death was a much more catastrophic event in my life than, let's say, losing the money. You know which one was harder? Losing the money. Why? Because I didn't have the mindset that I did 3 years ago when he passed away. I didn't have that ability to look as far into the future and say, you know what, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. And this right here and now sucks. It hurts. It's bad. Nothing good about this. But I do know that this is not the end, at least of my story. My husband has a great quote. He says, as long as you have a heartbeat, there's still time for your dreams. And he lived it up in 40 years. And I'm like, okay, my heart is still beating, so I know that there's something going forward. And here's what I did. I was able to look at other people who had gone through similar things and been like, okay, if they were able to go on with their life and do something productive eventually, is it at least possible that I can too? Of course the answer was yes. Is it at least possible that I can too? Yes. Okay, I'm not gonna do that right now, but I know that that is the potential. So I can work my way, sometimes very slowly, sometimes 3 steps back. But if you see that potential and you have that idea of you're going to put what you need now on hold in service of a greater future, that's how you get there. Thank you guys so much.
One more time.